Moving on to genetics and the latest science with Crispr, the geniuses. Getting into a bit of genome editing, I see. And yeah, our attention is directed towards this latest science as we compare it to some of the most ancient. As we are told, there's nothing new under the sun, so we should be able to see the dangers involved, learn from the past, see how some of these things may have entered our genome that they want to get out, and all that kind of jazz. So I mentioned something about the Sphinx in my last video. What does it all mean, Basil? What does it all mean? And I was thinking, I mentioned an incapability compared to a human within the body of the Sphinx. So we're looking at a handicap there, but we also see a human head. So despite all the intelligence you have without a thumb and the body, correct body, it's not really ideal for our purposes anyway. So yeah, psychology of an animal. We're going to see how this relates directly to our own genome and our perceptions. And despite these viruses, random things in our genetics, we're going to analyze some of the dangers of taking these things out despite the direct connection to illness, disease, disharmony in the body and mind, because this all creates, this whole thing is mind, this whole body is consciousness, genetic memory, muscle memory, consciousness of the body itself, fear responses, our reactions, empathy, it's all in genetics. And what they called junk DNA once. Stand back in amazement, oh wow, it has a purpose. Finally they're starting to realize. Geniuses, I tell you. Absolute geniuses. So yeah, the psychology of an animal I mentioned, looking at this from a shamanic perspective, but it could be any sort of perspective really. Okay, let's compare an animal to a human. So a human has more free will. They're able to make calculations, weigh things up. Yeah, freedom of thought more so than an animal. And when we look at an animal, we see a programming there. It's like instinctual programming. They don't calculate. Some do. I mean, crows are known to count. There's a few minor exceptions. Skill and minor adaptations. We see these minor adaptations. We don't see really any major evolutions in our time, or really more links are needed. Okay, so back to this. Okay, now we've got It's interesting because we've got the Sphinx, got an animal body and a human head, but with the Egyptian pantheon of gods, we have a human body but an animal head. So there's a parallel of opposites there, and to think that this has no significant meaning would probably be a mistake, as we usually find that out making these assumptions and not scrutinizing these things to absolute perfection. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is based in perception and biological reflections of this and expressions of the type of consciousness that these deities hold. So when you're talking about gods with an animal head, an animal being something that's programmed, we are looking at a program, a highly evolved program, one that probably is strongly connected to the material world, and as well as maybe some other higher dimension, but at the same time as powerful and knowing as it is. Because as we know, an animal doesn't think, it just knows. It knows things, it knows where to fly in the winter, knows some fish know how to find their way back to the place of their spawning from the depths of the ocean. I don't think they've got any sort of magnetic connections in their little fish brains. Maybe. You never know what kind of little wiring they've got, but my point remains, this is the way I'm looking at the pantheon of gods with the animal heads, but here we have incapable. So those gods were incapable of doing anything wrong, okay, pretty much. Incapable of going outside their boundaries. Maybe some became self-aware, maybe some rebelled, and we have these stories in the scriptures of these rebellions, and we have the Matrix movie, how the program rebelled and took over. But so I've been looking at borna virus specifically, and its origins are in the animal kingdom. They don't know how it got in our genome, but it is specifically an animal virus, and it's not really compatible with more, I hate the word, but evolved or more divine, I should say, more divine DNA, genetics like human beings. So it's interesting because we're looking at the pyramids as well, and yet with the death of Osiris, the absence of a, what do you call it, offspring, heir to the throne, whatever, more genetically speaking, offspring. I look at Osiris as unique in himself and not really having any biological equal human counterpart to breed with, even if he was alive. And I was also looking at crossing divine genetics with human and revising this thing that's modernly seen as like racism, or they thought they were higher, but from a scientific perspective, mingling a divine gene into something that is human and different genetically, you might be increasing the power of the virus, you might yeah, it's created a distorted consciousness there. And then we're looking at some other things to do with the pyramid and the creation of Horus in response to the absence of this divine gene, showing how Isis, in representation of the divine feminine and higher consciousness, that higher consciousness, I'm not saying they weren't incarnate at one stage, maybe they were, who knows, but also, symbolically speaking, also, it's not just one thing or the other. It's, yeah, we can combine these things, because I do believe their lives, if they lived, did also reflect certain things of consciousness. So we have the divine feminine being the capability within consciousness as to help this gene recombination and to correct error code in the human genome. And we see Horus, once he's born, being developed, this internal battle that reflects in the reality around him, fighting animals, things like that, has to pull out one of his own eyes. Now we know the eyes are connected to each side of the brain, left and right, and we know those two different sides or hemispheres hold different types of consciousness. And what we're going to look at as this error code, we've also been looking at the two, what do you call it, the two sticks, I called it. But yeah, the two keys really, and I showed how like certain areas continue this symbology, like in the Vatican, the symbol is basically two keys on the Vatican coat of arms, and this relates to these very ancient things. Okay, so we have back to the two keys of consciousness to access this higher perception. We're going to see these two keys. One of them we're going to identify as more associated with error code in perception. I'd like to find something here if I can. It's more of a specific picture. Here we have, there's definitely two different keys. Here we have two-handed, double-headed kind of thing, and here we have a more just singular kind of thing. I'm wondering where another picture would be. Something. Alright, I think I found it. Sorry to act like a blundering idiot. I take a few notes sometimes, but I don't really prep these videos all that much. It's just practice for the real game. Okay, so two keys, as I've previously stated in certain prophecies, random prophecies, these two keys are going to be given to a woman at the start of cataclysms, and the end of dynastic Egypt was marked with cataclysm, and we see a woman with these two keys. Viracocha had as well in Peru, and we are going to identify the specific differences in these two keys. We're going to identify why it's relevant to be giving these two keys to a woman. Yeah, that seems to be, it's relevant there too. As I take a sip of my sparkling water. Yeah, so I mean, we got two strands of DNA, two hemispheres of the brain, two eyes. I mean, why not just one eye? And you know, there's reasons for this. Like consciousness, like expresses itself in biology, and you know, and right through the material plane, and we can identify it when the right symbology is there. So yeah, we're going to identify these two things as keys of consciousness. And this one specifically here, we're going to analyze as a connection to the error code. And we're also going to see how that connects to left brain connected to right eye. And right brain we're going to be seeing as a higher consciousness. When we say divine feminine, I mean take the female, the sex organs out of the equation. All these things originate in consciousness first before they enter the material plane anyway. So yeah, we're focusing on consciousness, not like women are inherently divine. I mean, no one's inherently divine, man, woman, child, animal. Perhaps they are, but I mean, divine means a choice. Or does it? Not really. Well, to me what it means is you're divine, but you're not just an animal-headed program that can't step outside into imperfection. Some of the things, there's always an X factor. Some of the things are the most beautiful from apparent mistakes. I mean, yeah, got to include this X factor into our equations, and yeah, seeing what the real go is. Some of these mistakes could be consciousness itself error correcting in reality, whatever. Okay, so hopefully I've covered that. Just make sure. Yeah, I think I've pretty much. Yeah, so we are going to include the virus. We're not going to go with Crispr and go rip out the virus as much as I'd like to too and see an end to disease, but it was put in there originally. I believe, and we can see that with the creation of Horus. So it's in there for a reason, and we're going to find the correct system that this virus belongs to, why it's there. This is the unknown. Now the known and the unknown are connected. It's the unknowable that's completely separated. I mean, there's things that are completely unknowable, I'm sure, and even that's probably possible to reach, but we're dealing with the unknown now. It's already been released, the seal's already out in this reality, that's why I'm seeing it now. It's been unsealed.